All right, I'm going to add these notes to our rational expressions notes that we were taking before. So if you recall, this is what we were doing in our last class. So we were multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So that was where we would factor the top and bottom and then cancel, and then whatever was left over was our solution. And the only difference between multiplying them and dividing them was when we were dividing, we had to flip over the right-hand side. And then again, we canceled, and the stuff that was left was our answer. So today's is going to be a little bit different. So if I start to go too quickly, please let me know. But we are no longer multiplying and dividing. We are going to add and subtract rational expressions. All right, so remember, rational meaning ratio means that they are a fraction, but all of these have variables. That's what makes them tough. So if we had something like 9 over 8x, that's a rational expression because it's a fraction. And let's add that to 8 over 5x. All right, so these are fractions. And to add or subtract fractions, you need a common denominator. So in this case, our common denominator, we look for a number that both 8 and 5 go into, which is 40. And then they both have an x in there. So 40x is our common denominator. So I'm going to write in my next line, we're going to put both of them over 40x. Okay, we have to make them both to be over 40x. So now I figure out what do I multiply 8x by to make it 40x? I would multiply by 5. So there I'm multiplying the bottom by 5. So I have to also multiply the top by 5. And so 9 times 5 is 45. And then for the right-hand side, to change 5x into 40x, I have to multiply by 8. So I have to multiply the bottom by 8, but also the top by 8. And 8 times 8 is 64. And so once we have the common denominator, then we just add across the top. So that's going to be 109 over 40x. And we would look to reduce that, but this one doesn't reduce. So again, the process is you look at the denominators and figure out what is the common denominator. In this case, it was 40x. So then you see, what do I multiply this by to get 40x? You have to multiply the top by the same thing. So I multiplied on the left side, the top and bottom by 5. On the right side, I multiplied the top and bottom by 8. And then once you get the common denominator, then we just add or subtract on the top and leave the bottom. So far, so good? All right. Okay, let's try another one then. So let's say we have 7 over x plus 2 plus 3 over x squared minus 4. All right, so we want to find a common denominator. To do that, this thing factors. So I'm going to factor that bottom right. I'm not going to write a whole new line, though. I'm just going to factor that bottom right. I know that those are perfect squares, so that's going to factor into x plus 2 times x minus 2. All right, so now our denominator, our common denominator, has to have this in it, and this in it, and this in it. And so our common denominator is x plus 2, x minus 2. And I guess kind of a common mistake is sometimes students think it's x plus 2 squared because there's one here and one here, but it's not squared. Okay, if you have the same term, you just use that term to the highest power of that term, but they're both to the first power. All right, so to make this denominator into this denominator, I have to multiply top and bottom by x minus 2. So on the top, I'm going to distribute the 7. Okay, that's 7x minus 14. And then over our denominator, of course. All right, now on the right side, the denominator was already x plus 2x minus 2. So I didn't change the top at all. So we don't have to mess with that top at all, which is nice. We just leave it as 3 over that denominator. So now that I have a common denominator, I just add across the top. So when we do that, we get 7x minus 11 over x plus 2 times x minus 2. All right, so again, process was we had to get a common denominator. We had to factor that side, the right side, to get that common denominator. But once we get that common denominator, then we see what do we have to multiply one denominator to make the other. We had to multiply by x minus 2. So we do that to both the top and bottom. On the right side, we didn't have to multiply those by anything. So we didn't change the top. That just stayed 3. And then we just add across the top and leave the denominator. All right, let's try another one here. So the process is, going to be the same. The problems just differ in what are the denominators, really. So for our next example, let's do 2x plus 1 over x minus 5 plus 2 over x. All right, so like in the last problem, we had to factor that bottom right, but in this problem, neither denominator factors. So that saves us a step. And now we need to find the common denominator. So remember this x minus 5, that's all one term. So that means our common denominator is x times x minus 5. Okay, it's not like just the x. So we have to have the common denominator is x times x minus 5. And you can write those in any order. You could write x minus 5 times x. All right, so I had to multiply that on the bottom, I'm sorry, on the left-hand side, I had to multiply the denominator by x. So I'll multiply the top by x. So don't forget to distribute that into 2x squared plus x. Okay, I did x times 2x and x times 1. And then on the right side, I had to multiply by x minus 5 on the bottom. So I will do the same to the top and distribute that too. All right, so we combine the numerator, we get 2x squared plus 3x minus 10 over the bottom, which is x times x minus 5. And we may or may not be done. We should try and factor the top to see if it factors. So let me try and factor that trinomial up there. So I'll have 2x and x. And if I had factors of 10, if I tried 10 and 1, that's not going to work because that's going to give me 2x and 10x, which I cannot get 3x from. So I'll switch those and try 1 and 10. That's not going to work because that gives me 20 and 1. I can try 5 and 2. That's not going to work because I have 4x and 5x. And again, I can't get 3x from that. And 2 and 5 is not going to work because that's 10x and 2x. So it does not factor. Whoops, erase that. So the numerator does not factor. And so that's our answer. But that is an important step because sometimes if it factors, then you'll be able to cancel something else with the denominator. So you have to fully simplify your answers. All right, any questions? Just we hanging in there? You guys are doing okay? All right, I'm gonna do one more and then I'm gonna let you guys try some in a class kick here. So for our last one, let's do 5 over x minus 1 minus x over x minus 8. So 5 over x minus 1 minus x over x minus 8. So common denominator is, because neither one factors, common denominator is x minus 1 times x minus 8. So on the left side, we're multiplying the top and bottom by x minus 8. So when I distribute the 5, I get 5x minus 40 on the top left. And on the right side, I'm multiplying top and bottom by x minus 1. So that's going to give me x squared minus x. All right, so now we need to combine our like terms up top. So this one is a little different because of this minus sign in the middle. So be careful of that. When we're subtracting, you have to make sure you distribute that negative sign to both of those terms. So I'm writing in descending order. My numerator now is negative x squared. And I have 5x plus x, which is plus 6x minus 40 over the bottom, which is x minus 1 times x minus 8. All right, now that may be our answer, but we should try and factor the top. So I'm going to factor out a negative sign and see if I can factor x squared minus 6x plus 40. That does look a little promising to me because I know 4 times 10 is 40. But because it's a positive 40, they would have to be the same signs. So I can't, x minus 10 and x minus 4 is not going to work because that's going to give me negative 14. If I did x plus 4, I get my negative 6x in the middle, but I'm getting negative 40 on the end. Okay, so 10 and 4 are not going to work. 8 and 5 are not going to work, especially remember we have to keep them as the same sign. So it's either negative 8, negative 5 or positive 8, positive 5. So that idea of being able to factor like we talked about in our last class, hopefully you practice that a little bit and you continue to do so because these are, nearly impossible to do if you don't have some factoring skills.
Wait, Mr. O'Connor, why doesn't 10 and 4 work?
Say that again, please.
Why doesn't 10 and 4 work again?
If
factor.
I think the question was why didn't 10 and 4 work? And the reason is because this, if I did 10 and 4, because I'm getting positive 40 on the end, that means that I have to have the same signs. So if I did positive 10 and positive 4, that would give us positive 40, but that would give me a positive 14 in the middle because I'd have plus 10x and plus 4x.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense.
I'm sorry, I'm having a real hard time hearing you. I don't know if I answered that question or not. Maybe you could write it in the chat if I did not answer that. All right, good. Sorry, guys, about the sound issues. I thought I had that taken care of. Are there any other questions? Okay, I can see that some of you are done with the class kick, so I thought we'd go over that together. And if you're not done, you can keep working on those problems and I can leave these solutions up. So to do our first one, we want to find a common denominator. Now, the common denominator, you're looking for a number that both 6 and 4 goes into. So the most concise way to do this is to have a common denominator of 12x. Some of you guys did, I saw in your work, did 24x, which is okay. You'll still get the same answer, but you will have to cancel at the end. Okay, but another way to do that would be 12x. And so on the left side, I'm multiplying the top and bottom by 2. And so that means that that's going to be 2 over 12x on the top. And on the right side, I'm multiplying the top and bottom by 3. So that's going to be 15 on top. And so then we add them together and we get 17 over 12x. Now, some of you that used 24x as your denominator, you ended up with 34 over 24x, which means you did it correctly, but then you have to reduce the 34 and 24. So we still should get the same answer of 17 over 12x. All right, next one. We have a common denominator of x minus 2 times x plus 5. So on the left side, we are multiplying top and bottom by x plus 5. So I'm distributing that 2x, and we get 2x squared plus 10x. All right, now on the right side, this is a little tricky, so check out your work here. We're multiplying top and bottom by x minus 2. When we multiply the top, we are going to FOIL the 5x plus 2 times the x minus 2. So when we do that, we get 5x squared minus 10x plus 2x and minus 4. So I noticed that some of you guys had not foiled that. So just make sure that you foiled that top right there and didn't just like distribute the 2 or something. All right, so now we're going to combine the like terms. We get 7x squared plus 2x, okay, because I have negative 10x. I have 10x minus 10x, those cancel, and I just get 2x. And minus 4 over x minus 2 times x plus 5. I'm going to try and factor the top just to see, make sure I don't miss anything. So if I had 2 and 2, that's not going to work because that's 14x and 2x. And if I had 1 and 4, that's not going to work because that's 28x and 1x. And if I had 4 and 1, that's not going to work because I'm going to get 7x and 4x, which I can't get 2x from that either. So therefore, that does not factor. And that's our answer. All right, we still hanging in there? We got one more here. So to do number 3, we'd want to try and factor this bottom right, and that factors into x minus 6 times x minus 4. And so now my common denominator is x minus 6, x minus 4. So I'll write that on the left side, and it's going to be minus x minus 6, x minus 4. So on the left, we are multiplying top and bottom by x minus 4. This is another FOIL. So don't forget we have to FOIL that top left. So when we do that, we get 5x squared plus x minus 20x minus 4. And on the right side, we don't have to change the top at all because we already had our denominator there. And so when we combine our like terms, we have 5x squared. And I have plus x minus x. So those cancel. So I have minus 20x minus 4 all over x minus 6 times x minus 4. I will once again try and factor the top. And if I had 4 and 1, that's not going to work. Because I have 20 and 1. If I have 4 and 1 like that is not going to work because that's 4 and 5. 2 and 2 does not work. And so that does not factor. So that is our final answer. All right, any questions?